one may claim to know the bigger truths of life, or the essence of life, or even the purpose of life, but all that stands irrelevant if we do not know the facts of our everyday living, the fact of our behavior, of our actions, and our habits, the routines that we have become familiar with. If we claim to have understood life and that does not reflect in our everyday living, what we are basically doing is being a hypocrite, because understanding life, knowing the essence, getting close to the truth of life has to translate into our everyday living, has to pervade in our behavior, in our actions, in our whole being. We may go on to say that we are a good human being, or we are someone who is truthful, who is rational, etc. But we may find that the fact of our life, that the reality of how we live is completely different. We may often lie, we may often behave in narrow ways and with a narrow mindset. Our claim to be good or to be rational is completely false if that rationality, that goodness doesn't reflect in our life. We can be completely out of touch with reality and at the same time assure ourselves that we are in fact very real, that the way we live is genuine and is in congruence with the reality of life. We may be living according to a certain influence, according to a pattern, according to our social structure, and we may think that that is in fact the reality of life. We would be looking life through a certain lens, through our own background of culture, society, and the people that we have grown up with, and think that that is in fact the reality of life, the truth of existence. We would find that each of us is restricted to one's own particular background, way of thinking, and ways of life. And it is this background, it is these influences that act upon us, it is through these influences that we construct a world around us which we assume to be the reality of life. We may say something and our actions could be entirely different, and it's totally possible that there is no actual intention of being a hypocrite, but just the way we are, the reality, the truth of us does not allow to be in a certain harmony, to be consistent with what we say. There is always a contradiction, there is always a dissonance in our belief, in what we think, in our ideology, and how we behave. The fact of our reality of our everyday living. We can be living a totally contradictory life and still think of ourselves as someone who is harmonious within, who is one within. and who is not divided, who is indivisible. And so, how does that happen? Does then our belief, our ideology, our claims have any real value? Because the fact of our everyday existence, of how we live, of how we talk, of the things we say to others is completely different from what we really think who we are, from what we assume ourselves to be. What we have is a contradiction in the name of life. We will find, if we closely observe ourselves, we will find that we are in contradiction in every other moment. We may promise ourselves to be something, we may push ourselves to be a certain way, and then find that in the reality of our life, the ground truth of our existence has something else to show and is completely opposite of what we are assuming ourselves or pushing ourselves to be. We may promise ourselves, we may construct this idea, this image of being someone, we may set some targets or swear to never lie or swear to never be dishonest, but then we may find that we in fact are dishonest, that we in fact do lie. And so, how does this happen? That in spite of our promises, our sheer will to be honest and to be truthful, we find that we are plagued with dishonesty, and lies and lying is our second nature. It is because we do not go into ourselves, who we are from within. Our speech, our ideas about ourselves merely become a facade, a lip service that we do, and would never align with our reality. Because if we simply live on ideas, on words, on images, then we are deceiving ourselves. Because our ideas, the words that we say to ourselves, the images that we construct within ourselves are not the proof of our reality. They are simply a mere construction, a setup that we have originated within ourselves, that we have given birth to. And it is this outward picture we think we are, and try to align our life, our existence, our reality, the fact of our everyday living to this certain idea and image that we think we are or we should be. By the sheer act of will, by simply forcing ourselves to be a certain way, is an exercise in self-delusion. We cannot make ourselves to be what we want to be, and we have to find out what we want to be, where is that want coming from, and that idea, that image that we want to emulate, does that have any originality, any fact to it, or that is just simply a borrowed, a picture that pleases us, and because it pleases us, because it makes us appear in a good light, we want to be that, and it is from that impression of that image, that idea, that we are influenced, and so we try to convert the reality of our everyday existence to that. Does that how harmony comes about? Does that how we become one, indivisible? We have to come close to the fact of our existence, of how we behave, of how we are so dishonest, of how we are basically a hypocrite, and how we contradict ourselves in every other sentence, in every other moment of our life. We have to see, perceive the actuality of this equation, of how our beliefs and ideas come about, and what is the fact of our life, of our behavior, of our ways in which we live, in which we proceed every day. Without understanding our everyday actions, our mannerisms, and how does our beliefs come about, there is no harmony within us. All we have is a separation, a compartmentalization of life. Our life, we will find that is divided, is separated into different sections, and there is no oneness in the life that we live. Our ideas about life, our assertion that we know what life is all about, we will find is totally shallow and has no substance, because these are beliefs, these are ideologies that we have simply picked up or co-opted. What we have is, what we live is a borrowed life. The reality of our life is simply an amalgamation of the different aspects of the environment we live in, and we have to then come close to the reality of the life that we lead daily, of our, of how we depend on our relationships, of how we treat one class of people versus how we treat the other class of people, of how we treat one gender versus how we treat the other gender. We have to inquire into the impressions that we have of certain images that are around us, how there is an impression within according to which we act, and because we think that that expression would make us appear in a certain light, would show ourselves in a respectable manner, and it is that impression according to which we behave, according to which we live our life. And does that impression has any reality? Until we are in contact with the way we live our life, with the way we talk and the things that we enjoy, how excited we get about some things and how indifferent we are to other things. We have to inquire into our excitement, into our indifference, into our ignorance that we carry about ourselves. the ideas, the perceived images we have of the world has to be gone into and looked at, and the things that we enjoy, the things that gratify us, what is the reality of that pleasure, of that gratification, of that enjoyment that we so vigorously involve ourselves in? Are they really the source of real joy, or they are simply a set of physical and mental gratifications that we have grown accustomed to and find ourselves repeatedly living again and again, because it is those pleasures, those enjoyments, that excitement that really makes us alive. Because apart from that, if we are to see our life, it is completely empty. There is nothing in our lives that really excites us. And so we look outward, we look at things, we look at activities, we take shelter in ideologies, in ideas, in imaginations to be really excited, to find some sense of adventure in them, because the life that we have built around ourselves is tasteless. It doesn't have any richness. It is completely dull, boring, and because of this dullness, of this boredom of our life, and from this dullness and boredom of life, we gravitate towards the things that are pleasurable, that we seek to enjoy, and it is then easy to find shelter in imaginations, to find shelter in ideologies, to escape into relationships, to escape into multiple modes of entertainments, than to look at the shallowness of our own life, of how empty our life really is, how there is a void that we are always trying to fill within, how there is never really anything that truly satisfies us, that truly makes us complete. After every experience, we find that there is something still missing, that there is something incomplete, and we may want to try something again. We find ourselves gravitating towards a different set of imaginations, ideologies, and experiences, because we have deluded ourselves into thinking that the richness of life lies outside, in these activities, these experiences, the enjoyments that we have gathered around us. We have to come close to the narrowness of our life and see for what it actually is, how we are petty in our everyday life, how we smile and giggle on stupid idiotic things. And it is this completely superficial, devoid of any intelligence, it is this circle that we limit our lives to. How we find pleasure in insults, how we enjoy belittling the other, how we like to show ourselves in a certain grand light, or in a light that makes us appear a good human being. Within ourselves, we might be completely petty, shallow, and even violent, but outwardly, we want to appear humble, polite, and grounded. And this is the corrupt life that we live daily. This is the hypocrisy of our life that we avoid and are ignorant about. We say one thing, we have certain ideas, we have certain beliefs, we think of ourselves as someone really good, polite, and respectable, but the reality of the life that we are living is completely opposite. And it is from that opposite that need to believe and take shelter in these multiple images comes from. The reality of our everyday life is who we are. Our pettiness, our narrowness, our tendency to escape, the dullness, the tastelessness of our own life is who we are. And we have to come close to it. We have to see for what it is. Our tendency to run away from anything that is real, from anything that makes us slightly uncomfortable, that is who we are. Our tendency to take shelter in company of other people, our tendency to take shelter in entertainment, in pleasure, that is who we are. And we have to face the truth of it, not just simply say that yeah, I know that, or I am familiar with that, but now what to do? We cannot so superficially approach our own life. One has to sit with it. One has to be in its close contact every moment, and not just passingly say that yeah, I know my reality, but then what is one to do with that? How is one to proceed further? How is one to resolve it? Seeking resolution or thinking that we have already known, and from that knowledge, how is one to change oneself? That's not the way of transformation. That's not the way of life. One has to come close to it so one understands it for oneself, and not just a superficial sort of intellectual breaking down of who we are, and then at the end of it we are just simply blank with no idea how to manifest real change or how to transform anything. This superficiality with which we approach our life, it is the culprit. We have to really sit on it. We have to really look moment to moment where our life is empty. How does this shallowness, this dullness appear in our life, and our irresistible tendency to look for an escape, to look for a certain pleasure, to avoid this void within, and how we fill this void with the things of the world, and how this void cannot be resolved by filling it up with the things of the world. One has to be in that void, go through the angst, the pain, watch it, be with it. One has to reduce oneself, allow the pain to burn oneself to nothing. And when this structure is understood, when we come in contact with the raw reality of life without any superficiality or shallowness, without the urge to get over it quickly, we find that we are finally silent, that the truth of light has made us quiet, that being with the fact of our existence has slowed us down, has stopped the movement that we circle within. That how that urge, our own compulsions, impulsiveness is nowhere to be found now. That when the reality dawns upon us, there comes a harmony through which we look at life and see the multiple sections we divide it in, see how we separate, cut, blend our life into these patterns, these structures that are the cause of all the conflict within. And it is this insight alone that can truly resolve anything, that can facilitate any transformation. The more we assert on the world that we currently live in, that it is the reality because it gives us a certain kind of gratification and it gives us a certain kind of shelter and security, the more we assert and hold on to this self-made make-believe world, the more we push ourselves further away from what is, from what really exists. Our need to occupy ourselves with myriad things of our life, with our occupation, with our relationships, with day-to-day affairs, this need for occupation ceases. That does not dictate the moment to moment activity of life. To occupy ourselves constantly is a way to run away from the reality of our life, because if we are not occupied, if we are not busy with these affairs of life that we have gathered around us, we have nothing. We have really nothing, and an emptiness that stares at us, and we fear this emptiness of life. We want to quickly busy ourselves with small things, with menial tasks, so that this big daunting reality of life moves away, goes away, and doesn't haunt us. But it never really does. The emptiness of our life stares at us in our eye, and we constantly avoid it. We avoid looking at it because we fear it. Because deep down we really know the shallowness of our existence, how we need to occupy ourselves, how we need the relationships that we have, how we need the structure, the routine, the habits that we have. Because inwardly we are deeply scared of life. We are in fear of living by ourselves. We are scared of the void that looks back at us. And so we find support, and so we find these roots, this network of escapes that we built around us. We rely on this, and whatever threatens to shake this, to disrupt this, to destroy our way of life, we become violent towards it, or we resist it. Because for the first time, someone is finally making us look at the reality, at the truth of our life. And there are simply no other way, there is no simply other way, any idea, any image that we can just run to and take shelter in. We have to stand completely armless and face the emptiness, face the blank reality of our existence. We may be scared of it, but it is this emptiness, this shallowness that we have constructed for ourselves. It is only that which will actually liberate us from our constant need of occupation, from our multiple supports that we require to stand on. When we see the emptiness for what it is, the fear of it begins to dissolve. It becomes less and less daunting until it completely disappears. And at that moment, we have come in contact with the actual movement of life. From the life we think and we have built ourselves to the reality of life, we have to take this journey. Otherwise, we will find ourselves always escaping, always running into the direction that we don't even know where we are running. Because simply this running away has become the way of our life. That is all what we really know. And when we are tired of it, when we really want to stop, we find that the mind is not able to take it, that it becomes senile with age, that it cannot just simply grasp what has happened, that the running away is actually stopped. The mind completely shatters because there is no more support, there is no more running to any escape, any pleasure. There is simply being with what really exists, with the emptiness that we have created and have begun to call it life. It is this life that we have to face now, which only we have built for ourselves.